Hi there and welcome back to Japan, where we're continuing our listen through to Band-MAIKO, the CD that never focuses when I hold it up to the camera. Oh, that's a bit better. Anyway, so yeah, focus on me. There we go. Band-MAIKO. Really fantastic idea, something that I've been really interested in hearing for a while, and we're now through to the track Ansan, which is track 4. We already listened to the last track, Yoncho, when the video came out, so as a result we've only got this and 2 more songs to go. But to be honest, this is a really interesting album for me because it appeals to all my biases. I really like Band-Maid's sound. I'm really impressed by them as musicians and almost as much so as songwriters, and I've always been a great fan of the idea of putting traditional Japanese musical instruments in modern music, which is one of the reasons why I've really loved Wagaki Band when I've heard them. This has been an interesting one though, because we try to be honest. If we just tell you everything's great because, you know, we are biased towards it and we kind of like it ourselves, then we're no use to you. So picking holes in it, the only thing that I can really say so far, which has been a bit of a concern, is that it kind of feels like Band-Maid haven't really been so much pulling or choosing their punches with this one. It's just kind of playing the songs full on for the best part and trying to cram the Japanese instruments into the spaces that have been there, which means sometimes it's worked. In songs that have room, like YOLO, that was really great, and they did turn the guitars down a little bit for that, which was a really good decision as well. However, in songs like their version of One and Only, when it came onto this album, it kind of just felt like everything was a bit messy. It worked in places, but in other places it got really muddy and everything kind of things weren't breaking through. Sounds were starting to get crushed underneath other sounds. It's been a difficult experiment, and I've got to admit that it's a very difficult thing to do, what they're trying to do here, but I'm hoping to hear more songs where they maybe sort of pull the guitar back, give a little bit more room to those other sounds, and, you know, maybe go a little bit full on for the experiment rather than trying to have their cake and eat it a little bit too much. But what can we say? It's a fantastic band who are doing something outside of their comfort zone, and that should never be criticised. There's a lot more groups who stand to learn from this by giving something a go. So whether it was an April Fool's joke or not, I'm just really happy they're doing it. But we got to be honest, that's what we do here. We got to say how good it is. So certainly nothing bad so far, but a few things we've just been thinking, they could have done that better. I'm sure they could have done that a little bit better. Anyway, moving on, here we go. This is Ansan. Let's see how Ansan sounds now that it's my code. These intros are great on this album.
Check me out, 내 속도 내가 운동月影に隠さはでも難しゅて明けへん夜なんてないもんどすな
It works well at the beginning of this song. I'm interested to see how it sounds towards the bigger, louder crescendo at the end.
どないにどないにどないに埋めようとしても飽きまへん No まだ見えへんずっとね木に降りたいの曖昧な僕たちはきっと形にとらわはるばかりど言葉を探し迷うよりも抱きしめて遅れやすもう一遍と願ってまなんてかこないにできしまへんの絵思いつも
Feels a bit out of time. So stuff like that break was quite expressive, but there were some points in the background, maybe again because the guitar is so loud compared to the koto, where the koto just felt a little bit like, was it out of time or was it being played expressively and we couldn't hear the detail? I don't want to be critical, I'm just being honest. The sound though, the overall sound's working really well. Having the koto with the acoustic guitar, that's working.
嘘に浸した心いっそすべて壊しなどないにどないにどないに愛らしゅてもそろと魔法は溶けていくもんどすそうどすそやかて繋いで言いたいお手と手このまま時間を止めておくれやずっとね木に降りたいの言い訳の聞かへん気持ちを会えへん時間が刻ん
That little shakuhachi bit at the top is really great. It's kind of a bit dissonant, but it gives this atmosphere to everything. Adds a lot. Okay, let's see how things develop now they've gone full force. I love that bass line. Just that little bit of shakuhachi is making a really big atmospheric difference, which is, you know, is really helping build things up. So, okay, with that, I think that brings a very different approach to a lot of the things that we said on the album. It reiterates some of the things and it also breaks things up. Now, going for a song that starts acoustically like that is a good choice. I think that it's nice because, like I say, acoustic guitar and koto seems to go really well together. I do think, again, the acoustic guitar was turned up too loud compared to the koto. I don't think it needed to be that loud. I'm not sure who mixed this, but there seems to be some really weird mixing decisions going on here. Nothing wrong on the musicianship, it just seems that the studio work seems to be very bizarrely handled. So for me, we know the original, we've heard the original, we know what it sounds like with an acoustic guitar front and centre, we know that sounds great. This is not the original. Someone should have wound back that acoustic. And, you know, maybe you could even just change it so the acoustic, instead of strumming, was just playing like one chord, hold, one chord, hold, and then the koto was filling in the gap after the chord had been stabbed. You know, because let's face it, they're both acoustic instruments. So still having the acoustic there, but replacing the strumming with the koto playing the offbeat and the acoustic playing the onbeat. So the acoustic doing your 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the koto being in the 1, 2, 3, 4, This is me trying to explain this in a really palatable way. People have said before that I'm good at explaining this sort of thing, but every time I hear myself say it, I think I sound like a bit of an idiot. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying there. But I do think there was a lot of room, rather than pitching these instruments against each other right at the beginning of the mix. Because like I say, we got to that one bit where the koto I don't know how to pronounce that, koto? Yeah. Started to sound off time, but then you had the breakdown where it was playing off time, but it sounded perfect. And I think the only reason it sounded off time, out of time in the verse, was just because you couldn't really hear the detail of what it was doing underneath the acoustic guitar. So yeah, again, there's this conflicting thing where things aren't necessarily working, but at the same time, musically, like I say, musically it's really great. I think I'm starting to narrow it down to just I don't like the way this album's mixed. Like I said, there are some things where everything's being thrown together too much and there's just no way it would work. But this one could have worked, I think, a lot better if they brought it back. To the band's credit, though, the way they've written it, for the best part, it does sound really nice and really clear. And when it is working, it's just beautiful. And those breakdowns are a really great example of that. The breakdowns where it sort of bounced between just being the traditional Japanese instruments and then throwing back into the full band. You really got a taste that there was lots of little interesting things in there. And this is one of the best things about this album, is there's a lot to listen through to and you can take a lot away from it. The little shakuhachi thing at the top of the mix, the thing that was just kind of occurring, that was beautiful, that was genius, that was really clever. I mean, it was a bit dissonant, and it added so much atmosphere. It didn't interfere with anything. It just kind of sat in the background and just sort of appeared just in a way that it grabbed your attention, but not away from the music. And that to me was one of the most inspired choices of the entire song, and yet one of the most simple ones. And it certainly was the one that gave the strongest, if you like, traditional Japanese music atmosphere. If you've ever been to like a concert of traditional Japanese musicians or even folk musicians, there are just certain sounds you know. And if you've ever been near to like a jinja or a shrine, that sound of just like a little bit of a, I think you can call it staccato when it's with a wind instrument, but those little like the little pops of sound that sometimes a shakuhachi does when it's not playing like the long, shakuhachi being the flute instrument, in case you didn't know, the traditional Japanese style flute, when it's not playing the long notes, when it's just doing a little whoop, those sounds, that's so evocative of that sort of atmosphere, and it really does make you think of that sort of thing. So little inspired choices that were great. And then the koto seemed to be playing some really interesting stuff. You know, that sort of whole koto shamisen mix was playing some really interesting stuff, but again, it kind of felt a bit crushed. The acoustic section, you heard it a bit more, but there was just room for it more. In the middle of the song, I think the song worked best in the middle. At the end, where you have your full-on drumming and your really heavy guitar, there just wasn't room again for it. The shakuhachi at the top did ring through, but the rest of the sound started then to go from, you know, the beginning, it was in the same ground as the acoustic, and there was no room to breathe. In the middle, everything was kind of working well. There was a good sort of syncopation between the sounds. At the end, the heavy stuff was heavy enough that you kind of didn't have room, and they might as well have just sort of drawn the sound out there and just left that little shakuhachi in the top and just kept it as a rock crescendo, because the song had been through a nice progression. Yeah, so like I say, there's a few things to take away from this. I think it's mainly the mixing is kind of unfortunate. I think there should be, you know, considering what this is, and considering this is not to be seen as a serious release. I mean, they even changed the band name for it to Band-MAIKO for a bit of a giggle. You know, it's an April Fool's joke. They're doing it to showcase a different side of their talent, and you can tell from the writing and the musicianship that their talent is on full display here. And yeah, I kind of feel like, I don't know if it's record company pushed or whatever, but there just seems to be this effort in the mix to make sure that Band-Maid is still at the front. And so it kind of feels like these sounds are added, but sometimes in a slightly half-hearted way. Like the sound engineer or whoever's doing the mixing just doesn't have the confidence to turn Band-Maid down. Like I say, you've got to remember, we've all got the originals of these songs. We've all heard the originals. They're not going to be erased. If you turn down Band-Maid in these mixes, you're not going to erase the original. So, yeah, I wish that they had a bit more breathing room on this. I suspect that the engineer would have, and I hate to keep on drawing this comparison, but considering that when you're looking at this particular very niche-y style of musical fusion, you kind of got to look at stuff like Wagaki Band as being the gold standard. Because this is what they do. This is their territory. And their albums are really, well, their songs, certainly from what I've heard, are amazingly mixed. And the guitar is very punchy, but the guitar is often very turned down as well. It's just about knowing how to exercise it. So I get the feeling that maybe there should be a bit more confidence in how this album is produced. But thus far, you know, there's been some really great stuff on here. That, again, it did work really well. I think we come back to the same thing we've been saying throughout this EP so far, which is that I love what it's doing. My personal bias is telling me that I love it, and I certainly am going to listen to this plenty more times again in the future. But I'm always going to have this nagging sensation that this could have been done better. And not so. I don't think, the more I listen to it, I don't think it's really Band-Maid's fault. I think it's just that the personnel on this, the staff on this, perhaps. I mean, I don't know. They might have mixed it themselves, but it just feels like someone's. Like I say, someone's frightened to play with those sliders on the mixing desk. Someone's frightened to play with the volumes as much as they should. Because we heard on the YOLO version how well that worked. When they turned down the guitar, it didn't make it any less a rock song, but it gave more breathing room. Anyway, enough of that said for now. We're going to jump in with the next one, which is, this will be in the next video, so feel free to join us for that when it comes out very soon. And as always, I will be as honest as I can. Like I said, I'm loving this CD and it appeals to me a lot, but I'm not just going to sit here and go, everything's amazing, because as we've said before, what possible use is a reaction channel where we just tell you what you want to hear and never give it any real opinions. So, the next track is Akashi... It's really hard to read English downwards when it's saying Japanese words. Akashi ma hen. Akashi ham. Akashi. Oh my god. I'll just I'll practice it and I'll tell you when that video comes round. So for now, from Japan, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, get in the comments, tell me what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Contend with my opinion, agree with my opinion, do whatever you want, but I'm just really interested to see what you guys think as well, because these are just my educated opinions, you know, and music's all about opinions after all. And of course, if you're really lovely, you can always like and subscribe. Yeah, I'm doing that YouTube thing now. But until then, check out any of our videos, go in the description box to check out the link to see the playlist for us listening to Band-Maiko's album, including the 2 songs that we'd reviewed prior to this album being released, I think. But for now, from Japan, we'll see you soon. Ciao, ciao.